Welcome to the Millennial Rant, a podcast about whatever's bothering me today. With topics ranging from politics to pop culture, there's a rant to cover everyone. For more Millennial Rant content, you can join me on the web at millennialrant.com. The topic of this video is super controversial, even without my particular take on it, which is that national parks are great and gorgeous and beautiful and amazing, and they should not be national parks. That doesn't mean that they shouldn't be parks. It just means that they shouldn't be owned by the national federal government. In the Constitution, there are provisions that say that the federal government can own land for very specific reasons. National parks is not at all one of those reasons. If the Constitution doesn't say that you can, you meaning the federal government, then you can't. Those rights, those actions belong to the states. If states want to take large portions of their land and turn them into conservatories, into parks, into recreation areas or whatever, that is the prerogative of the states. The federal government has absolutely zero place in that. I remember back in 2013, I was working at Jackson Lake Lodge at the Grand Teton National Park, and I had already left at this point because I started university for my Master's of Fine Arts. But my brother and his fiance, not quite at the time, his girlfriend, my best friend, they were still there working at the lodge when the shutdown happened. And it was like something straight out of a dystopian nightmare. So they roll up to the park gate they had been in town, they roll up to the park gate to go back to where they are living and working. And there is a park officer, a park ranger at the ranger station, the checkpoint at the front of the park with an automatic weapon and a handgun and a ballistic vest. And he's like, "You guys have 10 minutes to get your stuff and get out." It was insanity. Like, what? That is nuts. There's absolutely no reason at all that should ever be allowed to happen. The fact that so much of the land in the western states, including Hawaii and Alaska, is owned by the federal government is obscene. Like, there's no reason for that whatsoever. The federal government is so far detached from each individual area, its local ecology, its local geography, its local makeup, whatever. It's so detached that each of these parks are being treated as kind of a lump sum. You know, we're going to make blanket lump rules for every park to follow, whether it makes sense or not. And what really should be happening is that these decisions should be left up to the states. The states should be able to fund these parks, should be able to run these parks, should be able to make rules for these parks. And if the states decide that they don't want them to be parks, that is the state's decision. The federal government has nothing to do with it. It's overreach, pure and simple. Again, I'm not saying that the parks in and of themselves shouldn't exist. I've been to multiple national and state parks across the country, and it's always a great experience to be there, to explore and to learn and to just enjoy the area and nature the way that it was not originally done, because some things have changed, but in a way that you really can't in any other way because it's been so heavily preserved. But I'm also for small government. I just am. And I cannot reconcile this idea of the government owning 90% of some of these states. They just didn't hand it over when the states became states, and they control it. There's a map online that you can look up that says how much federal land is owned by the federal government, and it's kind of horrifying, to be honest. And that shouldn't be the case. All of that federal land that is not being used for the very specific purposes that the Constitution has designated land owned by the federal government be used for should be turned over to the states, for the states to manage, for the states to run, for the states to disband or to give out if they want to. The parks are beautiful, they should be preserved, but they should also be in the hands of the states. I'm not going to boycott national parks. I'm not going to be like, until they get turned over to the states, I'm never visiting another park. What is that going to do? It's like a hunger strike. The only person you're hurting is yourself. But I still am going to think it, and I'm going to vocalize it, and I'm not going to apologize for it. States should be responsible for their own land, both the input and the output, as well as the upkeep, and I will never change my mind on that.